What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Fernando Comics. It's been a bit since we've talked to you guys. Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 times that Thor did some of his lesser known feats. So hopefully you guys get something out of this video that you didn't know before. Alright, let's start with 5. Alright, let's do a simple start to this list. Let's look at a lesser known physical strength feat that Thor had back in the day. This is coming to you from Thor number 424, part of the Black Galaxy Saga. And what we saw in this comic was the birth of a Celestial. What happened was these canisters made out of Celestial armor came together, and at the end of that they formed a new Celestial that then floated off into the ether with the rest of its kind. Now, what was in some of those canisters though were gods. This is kind of what's needed in order to power these Celestials, in order to birth a new one. They were running off of god energy. And at the end of the comic, one of the canisters that was used, again made out of Celestial armor, drops to the ground, and Thor, using his bare hands, rips it open. So all he needed to rip Celestial armor was his grip strength, essentially, and inside of it we find Hercules, who then comes out and he continues with the rest of the story. And now, there aren't many characters who can boast having a durability stronger than Celestial armor. Apocalypse coats himself in it. The Celestial armor used during some of the old Thor comics was strong enough to bounce back the Destroyer's punches. It's a big deal. So for Thor to just grab it and start pulling it apart, most characters probably wouldn't last very long if Thor started pulling limbs. Now, moving on to number 4, we're going to jump just slightly forward to Thor number 432. This was what I believe at the time intended to be one of Thor and Loki's last fights against each other. And I say that because of the way that it ended. Because you see, this is actually the last comic that Thor appears in for quite some time. Because after this is where we get Eric Masterson. And the reason we got Eric Masterson is because Thor received punishment in exchange for the ability that he used at the number 4 spot here. And the ability that he used, which is banned by the gods, is the ability to draw out the immortal soul of another god and essentially disperse it. It's a permanent death. Thor used this on Loki very much with the intention of Loki never existing again. Not in this plane, not in Valhalla. Loki was gone as far as Thor was concerned. That didn't happen. Like, we know this. Like, there's plenty of Loki stories that came after. But Thor's intention was clear. He was going to kill Loki. Now, what this means is that if someone has god juju in them, like if they have an immortal spirit, if they are gods, Thor can insta-kill them. We can only say for certain that this goes up to Loki, but that is plenty considering that Loki at the time was enhanced to levels that he'd never been to before. And when you think about it, the ability was used on a god, and it worked. God's souls are notably more powerful and brighter than mortal souls, in Marvel Comics anyway. It's not far-fetched to believe he could do it to a mortal soul as well. But the point remains, if he can point this at a god and it lands, that is instant death. Now, moving forward to the number 3 spot, we jump to Thor number 478. And it's not exactly a secret that Thor is a master at using lightning. He's not just a master, he's the god of it. As opposed to Storm, that has to rely on natural lightning and atmospheric effects that she can produce with her mutant abilities, Thor's lightning does not obey the laws of physics. It doesn't obey anything besides him. So he can rev that lightning up to any level that he wants. And in this issue, he makes it so hot and so powerful that he's able to weld his hammer back together, and it functions perfectly fine. It got broken by the Destroyer, and then Thor just calls the lightning down, fixes the pieces, moves on with his day. It goes without saying, Thor typically doesn't use this level of lightning on his opponents. Thor is known for holding back. If he used this level of heat and power on some of his opponents, he'd leave a lot of puddles around New York City, which he tends to try to avoid with mortals. So now we jump way forward to Astonishing Thor number 3 for our number 2 spot. And Astonishing Thor, this series was beautifully drawn. Some of the most gorgeous Thor art ever. Art in comics ever. Thor was a little low end in his abilities in my opinion, but they were focusing more on the abstract concepts of the gods and trying to tell a big story. It was okay. It's worth reading for sure. But something that was really interesting in this miniseries was that because of the nature of Thor as a god, he's not easily held in pocket dimensions or dimensions outside of our reality against his will. In fact, in this series, all he had to do when he was stuck into a pocket dimension was literally use his finger, and he broke holes in reality. It's something unique to him, and it's something, I can't say it goes for all of the gods, but it was something that was made clear throughout the series was, you're not going to hold him where he doesn't want to be held, and he didn't use the hammer. This is something exclusive to him as a god. And now for the number 1 spot, which, by the way, these feats aren't being ordered in what's most impressive to least impressive or any form like that. It's just chronologically. So if you say something was more impressive earlier in the video than this one, yeah, you're probably right. But I just included this feat because it's one of a kind for Thor, in the sense that he's really showing off his storm control. We were talking about that a little earlier in the video, but what this feat represents is Thor can control a storm anywhere. Anywhere. And he proves that by grabbing hold of his old counterpart, and he creates one inside of him. Thor has a lot of instant kill options in his arsenal that he just does not use on people who he doesn't want to harm. He knew that this counterpart could resist storms to some extent, but he also knew the effect it would have on him, and that it would purge essentially the possessing demon that he had inside of him, which was like a robot Loki. This was a weird timeline. But it goes without saying, there aren't many creatures or heroes or villains that can resist having a storm of the caliber that Thor can produce inside of their body, and there's also no way to get away from it. It looks like he needs physical touch to do it. At least that's how he did it in this feat. In any case, that's usually how he fights. He's usually up in your face. And if you notice the sword sticking out of Thor's stomach there, he got stuck with the sword from by his counterpart to prove the point that this was during the time where Thor was immortal, but suffering heavily from Hela's curse. So his bones were brittle. He was in constant pain. He had a scar. That's why he had the beard. But he was immortal, so you couldn't kill him. He got plucked from that timeline, and that's when he performed the feat. Sorry for the Jane Foster jump scare there. I try not to include her in things because she's kind of traumatizing to think about, honestly. But in any case, you guys, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you saw some stuff that you weren't aware of, and we're gonna keep doing stuff like this, maybe for other characters too. Just let me know what you think in the comments, all right? All right, we will talk soon. Later.